When we talk about the artificial intelligence revolution, our minds usually drift to Silicon Valley tech firms or high finance boardrooms. We rarely think of the heavy machinery, dust and concrete of a demolition site. But my guest today believes that the demolition sector is ripe for a digital transformation. Torquil MacLeod is from a company called Surtori, and they specialise in helping businesses streamline their workflows, eliminate data silos, and they use AI to protect and enhance margins. He joined me recently to discuss why the demolition industry has been overlooked by tech founders, how automated systems can drastically cut down the hours spent on health and safety paperwork, and why data might just be the most valuable asset on your site. Let's get into it.
I'm Torquil MacLeod, and I work for a company called Surtori, and we do digital transformation. So we help organizations look at their operating model as it exists now and look at how we apply technology and a data-first approach to improve margin, reduce cost, and increase efficiency in the way in which they do business. So that's it in a nutshell.
You say operating procedures. I took it you're talking about sort of administrative and business control type work.
Yeah, it can really be anything. So depending on the type of company we work with, and we do a lot within the construction sector, we'll look at the end-to-end workflow of the business, look at how data is passed through that business, the existing systems that they have, where the data silos are, look at the organizational workarounds of how people should be putting stuff in a system, but actually put it in a spreadsheet. And then we bring a common data layer across the whole of the business. And then we can start looking at how we can use automation, AI, and also sometimes it's just simple data visualization. You know, within construction, you've got these segmented workflows from design to estimation to delivery, and there isn't one golden thread of data that surfaces all that information. And what we do is we surface that data and provide it to those who need it in real time.
The interesting point that I take from that, this idea of a golden thread, I think one of the issues facing the industry as it stands at the moment is there is a lot of data, all of which is coming from 55 different directions, all in different formats, all serving different people. I was with a machine yesterday that is an intelligent machine, so you can tell that machine where it needs to dig, how much it needs to dig, and so on down the line. And it will be monitored, so that information goes back up the line. But it goes into this silo of information somewhere. Who the hell knows what happens to that afterwards? I guess your product and your service actually starts to pull all that together.
Yeah, that in a nutshell, that's what we do. You know, most businesses nowadays have tons of data. It's all over the organization, and people are gathering data sometimes just for data's sake. But it's understanding what data is useful and how it can be used and who needs access to that data. So we're not trying to rip out existing systems that people are used to working with. It's trying to get a common data layer across the whole organization, and a structure where that data can actually benefit the business.
You mentioned data for the sake of data, and I do think that's a really interesting thing. You know, the demolition industry, as we know it today, has been in operation for 100 odd years, thousands before that. But the demolition industry we know today, and they've generally got by with bits of paper and scribbles with biros and stuff like that. But my question, I guess, is, I realise it's very much flavour of the month, but do we really need all of this data?
That's a good question. And I think the best way of putting it is from historical projects that you've done and the data about how that project went, what your estimate was, what your delivery was. Yeah, these are all sort of siloed pieces of data that have been put on bits of paper, and maybe you find out how the job went at the end of the project. the idea of having a data first environment is that you can learn from historic data that can input into your, let's say, your estimating, in terms of, we've estimated a job like this before. What did we learn from that job? What was our profit on that job? Where did it go wrong? So it can then be used to input into that learning. And also sort of data around the tracking of how a project is being delivered. What are the challenges? Because once you start gathering the data and you can start putting agentic solutions over the top of it, you can do predictive analysis of what's actually going to happen on that site. So whether that be you're using subcontractors to do different parts of the project, and there's a conflict with those two subcontractors that need to be in that space. Let's say you've got a specialist removing some asbestos, and you've got another guy that's meant to be taking the steel out for recycling, and the schedule's been moved, and all of a sudden they're on the site at the same time. Not going to happen. So having the data and having the visibility of the data can really give you great insight about what's happening in real time on a site, and also inform about how you estimate new price jobs.
You were at the UK Construction Week event a little while ago, and I know you reached out to me afterwards, with this question, basically, why hasn't this come over to the demolition industry? My first answer is probably because demolition often gets overlooked, because it's the little cousin, the little annoying cousin of construction. We're not as big, haven't got as much money. But I also wonder, is there a feeling perhaps that demolition isn't ready for this level of technology, or is it just the fact that they've not been exposed to it yet?
I think demolition's ready for it. Every market is ready for this sort of technology at the moment, and we're working with a whole variety of from large-scale contractors to smaller sort of circa 15, 20 million turnover contractors in construction. I think the reason why demolition has probably been overlooked is, when you look at the marketplace, people don't understand it. I didn't actually think about having this conversation. That's why I reached out to you, Mark, until I saw collards at Construction Week, and I thought, hang on a minute. Demolition has exactly the same problems as construction. Why is no one talking to people in the demolition sector? You've got these data, you've got health and safety reporting, you've got plant and asset management, you've got program sequencing and risk, you've got problems with estimation. All of these things are in construction, but no one's doing demolition. And partly maybe it could be that software and tech companies just think they don't understand enough about the sector. Maybe there's not enough money. They think that maybe there's not enough money in the sector. Or, on the other side of it, maybe it's the fact that demolition has like this perception in the market where it's like a heavy industry. We need bigger machines, we need things that can take buildings down faster. Not the fact that it's an industry that needs better decision making. I guess tech founders and people just don't really understand the market and the complexity of the market. Around structural surveys, asbestos reporting, program risk, waste classification, all these things that you're being asked to do that add tons of hours to your job and complexity. I just don't think people understand it.
It's interesting, actually, because what you're describing is not dissimilar to what has gone before. I've always said that a lot of the demolition equipment that the guys rely on today is a compromise. It's actually a construction machine that's been beefed up or modified to suit demolition.
Yeah.
And I get the feeling that's continuing. Just tell me, how does your system work? Do you sell a license? Are you sat in the background as a consultant? How does the whole thing map itself out?
Yeah, so we don't sell a system, and I think that's the thing. We want to fix problems. So first of all, it's about understanding your operational model. Where are you losing margin? Where is there complexity within your organization that could be, enhanced or made better by the use of AI, automation, machine learning? But the most important thing, I think, is we start off by looking at the return on investment. So first of all, you have to look at the organization from end to end. highlight where within that organization there's real benefit and sort of like use cases that are going to get proper return on investment. And then you look at the appropriate technology to be able to realize that use case in the most efficient manner. And I think we've got to get away from this thing of, big software systems and software platforms. The future and what's coming is this sort of agentic layer that sits upon the top of all your core data. Once you've got your data organized and you've got a common data set across your business, these agents can take on different workloads, and they're pretty just, indispensable, really. Once you've got a common data structure, you can build an agent to do any particular workload that you want. And the speed of AI and the rate of improvement, an agent that you build today, actually by next year is probably going to be out of date. So you've got to think about, okay, I'm going to be replacing these agents every few years as technology improves. But once you've got that common data structure in place and that taxonomy, and you understand the areas of your business that can benefit from it, that's basically what we do. So we come in, and it's very different to a normal sort of consultancy firm. We don't just give you the guidance on where the business problem is and a nice PowerPoint or spreadsheet and then go, there you go, you need to go and fix it, or go and find a developer that will make it. We actually do the engineering as well. So when we do the needs assessment and we look for the business value, we're doing it through an engineering lens, because then we'll go away and build those solutions and implement what we've actually specified. So I guess we're taking the full liabilities of the delivery of the solution.
And I guess those models that you're building, you're using, existing platforms. I know everyone, whenever they talk about AI, they always refer to ChatGPT, but I guess there's sort of large language models and that kind of thing involved in this.
Yeah, so we use a whole different plethora of models, and it depends on the use case that's been defined and what you want that specific model to do. We actually find that the more generic models, we try not to use third-party out there LLMs. We try and bring smaller language models into the business and orientate it around a specific task, which makes it easier to manage your data, and it gives you more governance and control over what you're doing within your business. So we will build specific SLMs to do specific tasks and create agents within your organization, rather than using generic third parties. Because I don't know if you said, I will say it. I can see in the future, at the moment, we're all being given cheap credits to get us hooked onto using AI. And it's going to become part of our lives that we're all using AI, and then the price of AI and processing is just going to be ramped up. So we've got to start thinking now for the future about how do we make sure that we're building and implementing AI technology in a cost-efficient manner that will last for the long term.
I met with a company not so long ago, back end of last year, a company called Tendermole, who do part of what you do. In other words, they take a lot of the data from within a company and use it to fulfill tender submissions. So they'll take their insurance details and their health and safety record, and they'll combine it. And they're using much the same sort of system as you. And I asked them a question, and I'm going to ask you the same thing. Given the availability, setting the pricing to one side, given the availability of AI and that kind of thing, why should a company rely upon you when they could, with a bit of work, I guess, build an agent of their own?
They can. they could go ahead and build an agent of their own. The trouble is having the knowledge and experience to do it in the right way and implement it, having the governance, the framework, the understanding of how it fits, the complexity of it, aligning it to the relevant business case. We see a lot of companies out there that have gone invested and bought a ton of ChatGPT licenses. They've deployed it across their organization. They think that they're at the leading edge of AI. And you go and ask them a couple of pretty simple questions of, okay, so what was the problem you're actually trying to fix when you went to go and deploy that AI across your business. What's the return on investment of, that deployment of AI? What was the specific use case? And sometimes they just can't answer you. And you go, well, so why did you make the technology investment? Well, we just knew that we needed to be doing something with AI. We take it from a very different commercial lens, which is your business strategy aligns to your technology roadmap. You've got to be solving real-term solutions, and then we can build the agents and we can get your data in a place where you're able to do that. More than welcome to go and do it yourself. We're just providing a service to people that want an expert to come in and do it.
And I guess there's a degree of hand-holding there as well, isn't there? Having analysed the company and its data issues, and you've put in place a system to make that work. I guess you don't just abandon them at that point. You sort of lurk in the background should the whole thing fall over.
It depends how much the company needs. If they've got a fairly mature IT team and they're competent and they know what they're doing and they can manage the ongoing BAU process, then great. Yeah, most of the platforms that we build and are delivering, they're using very common Microsoft tech stack or Google tech stack that everyone has access to. We're just making sure that it works better for those organizations and that the organizations are getting what they need from their technology investment. Yeah, I'm sure that, you could probably think about this and some specific demolition examples where there were technology vendors that were coming in from the past and saying, this is going to change the whole of our industry. This technology is going to be X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. It didn't really ever happen. We just look for the pain points, simple areas of a business where you can apply technology, get improved customer service, improve your margins, get significant return on investment. And then once you've identified those areas, you just apply the technology.
It's interesting you should say that. This is all reminiscent of when demolition companies first hopped on the website bandwagon, and I realise that's quite a long time ago. They seem to fall into two camps. They either got, their nephew, who was 17 years old and done computer studies at school, he built it and it didn't work, or they paid a lot of money to get a proper web company to do it, who only granted them partial access and then went out of business. So they were left with a website they couldn't operate. I mean, we're back to square one again, aren't we?
I don't think it's the same as websites, because websites are, they're not really operational. They're not delivering business value. And with the technology that's around nowadays, and what we actually try and do, once the system's been built and deployed, yes, it does have a system shelf life. Absolutely. It's like any piece of technology. Technology is evolving at such a rate. But what we try and do is get people's data. And this is the thing that people are missing at the moment. I think that a lot of businesses struggle with this idea of their real value in the future is the data about how they operate. That data layer that they have as a business, the 15, 20 years of history that they have somewhere about how they quoted for jobs, how they delivered on jobs, that knowledge that's in the brains of their employees, that data is the thing that makes them win business. If we can get that data into a common data environment and enhance that data and use it, you really get competitive advantage.
One of the things that stood out from what you were saying there is this notion of almost like a bespoke. I mean, every company is different. Every demolition job is different. And what you're talking about here is not a one size fits all, I guess. You're talking about an individual model that's and you mentioned collards, for example. You could have an R collard version of what you do. You could have an RMAC version, a safe version, whatever it might be.
Absolutely. It's about making it for that business. Every organization, there's a reason why someone buys from that company. Is it the customer service? Is it the way in which they deliver the job? Whatever it may be. What we're doing, we're just getting companies prepared and their data in a place where they can be competitive in the next 10 years. I don't think it's around, if you're not starting to look at this now and how you can drive efficiency and improve customer experience, you're going to get left behind because everyone else is going to be so much more efficient. Yeah, when there's someone in the demolition market that can go onto a site and get an accurate quote out within 2 days on a large site because they're using AI, and it takes everyone else 4 or 5 weeks, who are you going to go with? When someone's health and safety record or compliance waste tracking is all automated from, I don't know, you could go and do a digital model of the building. You could understand all the different materials that are within that building. You could then asset track those materials from that scan. You could use a piece of technology like Cupics. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's something that's in the construction space. They can go in and they can create a spatial diagram of the whole building. They can label all the assets within that organization and create a BIM model of that whole building. And then once you've done that and you're starting to take it apart, you can see the quantities of that asset that you're taking. You can track that asset all the way through to recycling. Yeah, I just see so many opportunities within the demolition sector for, I guess, enhancing how you operate, not changing how you operate, but just enhancing how you operate, giving better value to your customers and actually making the business more efficient. I don't think that, everyone talks about AI job losses and the challenges of it. You're always going to have people in demolition going in and taking down buildings. You need a human in the loop to do that. I don't think that's ever going to change. Where I do see it changing is sort of estimating health and safety, cost optimization, compliance documentation, program planning, all these sorts of things that take loads of time and are a big operational cost. You can start automating.
I think one of the interesting things with all of this is the fact that this is likely to come from a pull rather than a push. My own personal feeling is if we left I think if we left demolition contractors, and I'm not going to tar everyone with the same brush, but most demolition contractors left to their own devices probably would not dabble with this kind of thing. But we've seen in past cases where they are working for tier one contractors, developers, major clients who are insisting that the envelope is constantly being pushed, be it in legislation, regulation, emissions control, health and safety, training, competence. I do think that demolition as it stands at the moment is an outlier in terms of its use for technology and its embracing of AI. But if the entire supply chain above you is insisting that you comply with it, you will have no choice. You'll just have to fall into line.
Yeah, I agree. But hey, I've run businesses for years. If someone came to me with a solution where I could, let's say I'm running a 50 million turnover, or just use 50 million example, demolition contracting firm, and someone turned around to me and was tapping me on the shoulder going, I can improve your margin probably by 10% and give a way better customer experience. All that hassle of all the paperwork that's getting lost and the estimating time it takes, you could get rid of that. I go, well, hang on a minute. I could improve my operating margin by 10%. Why wouldn't you? It's not, I don't think you should be being pulled into it. I think there's a commercial reasoning. And this is the bit that people don't understand, is the cost saving and the efficiency that you can get. That's why I get so excited by AI. It's not the technical element of it. It's about, it's about how it can transform your business.
You mentioned the word paperwork. When will we drop that expression? When will paperwork not be? Will it be digital work? I really don't know.
I use it because, from what you're telling me, that there's still, pieces of paper floating around in cabins, probably on demolition sites. I don't know.
Very much the case. Very much the case. I mean, it was only a couple of years ago that I did a site induction, and I was asked to sign an iPad, and it was so unusual. It was like, wow, they've but then they showed me all of the site documentation, all the rules and regulations and risk assessments and method statements, all on bits of paper.
Yeah, but you go, why? When let's say another area. Let's say can you imagine? You could go on and you could get AI, and you don't even need to imagine it because it exists, and we do it in construction. RAMS documentation. You don't need people to do that. You could historically go through and you could look at all the other RAMS documentation that you've done for similar sites. You could put in the site diagram, the site information, the site location. You could look at all the different health and safety criteria and specifications, everything that you need to create a RAMS. And you could get the AI generated, and then you just get someone to check it. Take tons of hours out of the process, days out of the process. They're the sorts of things where I go, why aren't demolition contractors using this?
You touched on this very, very briefly, and I think the world sees AI through two different lenses. There are those that this is going to make my job so much easier, and there's the other half that say that's going to make my job obsolete. Where do you stand on the ethics? I mean, I can't see what you're talking about here actually replacing people. I think it will empower and enhance people. I don't see it replacing people. But where do you stand on the overall ethics of AI embracing?
Is that in demolition, or is that?
I was thinking in general. I mean, I do my daily live stream, and whenever we mention AI or any form of automation, half the camp are, I would love to have that. That would make my life so much better, and the other half goes, I'm going to lose my job. But I think that's the same across the world. It's regardless of industry sector. I think AI is viewed, as I say, through two lenses. It's either let me have everything, or please don't let it take my job.
I look at it from a much more pragmatic approach. It's here now, it's being developed. It's getting better and better all the time. I think you just got to get on board and start moving with it. And it's not that AI takes jobs. I think it's more the fact that the companies that don't adapt will lose all the jobs entirely, because they'll get out competed. And that's the biggest risk, is that you either start moving with it and adapting and using it and demonstrating things like better compliance, better estimating, more accurate quotes, reduced overhead costs that make you deliver cheaper. You either start getting on board and doing that now, or the people that are implementing that are going to win the market share and you're going to be out of business. So I think it's here. You can't change it, can you?
No, absolutely. I do want to give you sort of a bit of a shop window to talk about your very specific product and service and everything else. Imagine I'm a demolition contractor, Mark Anthony Demolition, and I've just phoned you up and I said, I love what you say. That sounds right up my street. What is the process? I mean, you obviously you've got to understand their data flow and what data they've got. How long does that process take?
The initial process of going in and actually understanding a business is probably about 10 days, on average for a normal size contract. Obviously, if we're talking about a large construction firm or a large demolition firm and they've got 50 employees in each section, and it's, it takes longer. But for your average sized firm, I came off a call this morning with quite a large architectural practice, and they have 400 employees. We'll do the initial needs assessment in 10 days. So that's getting an understanding of what data they have, what systems it's stored in, how that data is being processed, how that data is being passed, because you get this trouble where, you have company will ask an organization, what's your defined standard operating procedure for this part of the business, and how is that data transferred? And you can ask a manager and they go, oh yeah, we've got a system for that, we've got a process for that, we know exactly what's going on, and they put it into this system. And then when you actually start talking to the people that do the job, you realize that they don't really use that system, and they use a spreadsheet, and then that spreadsheet goes to Bob, and then that spreadsheet gets sent to Gina, and then they go and double enter that information into the systems that they use, because they're not very efficient, the systems, but they need to do it for tracking. That's the bit, the discovery phase, that you've got to get right, so you can understand what data is stored in each one of the systems that they currently use, and that's from front office quoting to back office invoicing, how that data is passed through the business, what the workflow is at the moment, and then you can go back in and start going, okay, well, let's let's look at that workflow and the data that's being passed, give them a data diagram of what there is, and then we'll pick off use cases. So for us, everything is about return on investment or margin gain. So we try and create a roadmap, which is at the beginning, you can imagine a graph like this. You've got some easy to deploy, high value use cases where you can implement technology quickly and get quick return on investment. Further along, you've got some higher value, more challenging things to deploy, but greater return on investment. And then it's down to the business to look at that and go, well, this is what I want to be doing at the moment. This is my technology roadmap. This is my spend. This is how much I want to do. And then we align to how fast they want to adopt change, the budget that they currently have. They've got a clear technology roadmap that's been given to them. And then it's their choice on how far they want to go and how quickly they want to go down that journey.
I'm going to ask this question because I know somebody else will ask the question. That discovery phase basically means that I'm trying to think of a more polite way of putting it, but you're basically looking under the skirt of the business.
Yeah.
What security systems do you have in place? What assurances can you give that you're not going to steal their data or leave their data vulnerable to others to steal?
So we use their own platforms. So we're not hosting their data. Yeah, we're not building third-party software. We're not owning the asset. We're doing it all on their own systems. So for us as a business, we're ISO 9000 compliant, we're ISO 27001 compliant. My background's in cybersecurity, we're cyber essential. So, we've got all the badges to be able to do this properly. And we always get asked around, so what's the data security standards? What's this and this? And actually it comes down to, depending on your business and the standards that you adhere to and how you've implemented those standards, impacts how we build the technology solution for you. We're not hosting in our environment, it's your cloud environment. We're not building it that, things that we're going to run as a third party. We're building things that you're going to own and run as an organization. And that's the move that's happened in software, is that beforehand you were giving all your data and assets to a third party. We don't think that's right. Your data is the lifeblood of your business. That's what makes your business special. We're building those assets and these platforms for you.
One of the things that I find interesting, and I'm kind of confessing here, I was a magazine journalist for 30 years, and we'd write an article or write a magazine, send it out, basically get silence in return. We then switched over to digital and more subsequently to that, using social media a lot. And in the past, I'd send out a magazine and not really worry about whether it was read, who read it, and everything else. Now, because I have that data, I'm obsessive about it. You're not looking for your first customer here. You've done this with customers. Do you find that some of them are literally, I wouldn't say watching it like a hawk, although I'm sure some of them are. Are they literally watching the numbers as they go along now?
Well, if you're let's say you're running a large building project and you never had the visibility of what actually was happening on that project until the project was finished. You didn't know how close to budget you were. You didn't know how your schedules were running. You didn't have the visibility of what was going on the ground and how it impacted against your cost estimate. You didn't know the data that you can get from having this in real time. I think a lot of people just sit there and go, wow, because you've got real-time visibility of what's going on site, right in front of you. It becomes addictive. You're completely right. It is addictive. Imagine having all those reports available to you immediately in a nice dashboard. It's a game changer.
I'm sure.
Rather than getting to the end of the project and then going, did we make money out of that or not? Oh, no, we actually lost a bit on that. But you only find out 2 or 3 months later when you can't do anything about it. This, you're in real time. You can do predictive analysis of how a project's going and what your outcome's going to be. You can do scenario modeling. You can do all sorts of things once you have the data. But not having the data and not knowing, just look at it and go, you've got to be crazy. It's like Could you imagine a Formula One team trying to run a race car nowadays without having any data?
Well, your timing is perfect because I was actually at the Williams headquarters yesterday. Bizarrely, no, just by sheer fluke.
Go on, how come? Are you into your racing or?
I know nothing whatsoever about Formula One, but one of their sponsors is the construction equipment manufacturer Komatsu, and they hosted a day up there, and we got to go on the simulators, but play with the equipment as well. So yeah, no, but you're right. One of the things that really came out of that, because obviously construction equipment manufacturers are very big on telemetry and remote monitoring and that kind of thing. And I was drawing, literally earlier today, I was drawing the synergy between what Formula One do in the monitoring of their cars and car performance and driver performance, and exactly the same over in the construction industry. So I think your example is absolutely valid.
Well, you think, right, about a race car, the data that they're getting real time, all the time, to make adjustments, to make sure that they win a race. And if you apply that sort of analogy into a demolition firm, think how much more efficient you're going to be and how much more competitive you're going to be across your delivery. You know, all the reporting that you could get in real time about how it's going. Plant's a really interesting one. I know this sounds a bit, can I say geeky? I get really into fixing problems for different sectors, hence reaching out and going, why is no one doing this in demolition? And like plant utilization, I mean, that industry's got to change, because half the time you're paying for something that's not being used. How does that work?
It doesn't. It's the easy answer.
I mean, it doesn't work, does it? So why on earth isn't there some change within the plant manufacturers where you're paying for machine cost as you're using it? Why isn't someone changing that business model? Or, plant utilization modeling on a site. Okay, we've got 3 contractors on a site, all need the same type of equipment. Why are they renting different pieces? Surely we could streamline and drive efficiency there. I mean, there's tons of things that you can do, and that's not a hard problem to fix. It's just that it was too hard beforehand because of the paperwork and before, the agreeing contracts. But when you can go to use AI and say, right, here's our site schedule. Here's all the contractors that are on site. I want you to put this piece of plant, align it to our site schedule and who's using it well, as long as there's a certified driver that's got the right liability cover, create the documentation for me that aligns to this, and then get all 3 partners to sign to it. Yeah, I could build something that does that in probably an afternoon.
Mm.
Why aren't people doing it? It's save the amount of money it would save. Okay, maybe the plant contractors are going to put a contract out on me now, but
well, I mean, I think one of the challenges, and this is sort of going outside of the demolition sphere, but I mean, a lot of most of the equipment, probably 85% of the equipment that's used in the UK demolition and construction industry is through rental, and the rental model is we will charge you by the week, by the month. And that's how they prefer it. It will be very easy today to switch on a system whereby that you pay by use. If that machine is idling, if that machine is sat doing nothing, you should by this point be able to say, okay, well, that's the model I want to go with. But
as
you can understand why the rental companies don't want to do that.
You've all got, they've all got this data. As you're saying, they've got the data and the tracking. And I've sat in plenty of I like my diggers and tractors and all this plant, and you've got an hour clock. Everything's done by the hour, isn't it? In terms of digger maintenance, digger servicing, everything else. Why aren't we being charged by the hour?
Is that a tractor I can see in the background there, by the way?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's an old Massey Ferguson.
Wow.
A little grey Massey Ferguson.
I'll tell you now, half the audience that are watching this now will be more interested in that than they will in everything you said up to this point.
But I love things like that because it sort of reminds me that, I can go to that tractor, not use it in 3 months, and it will start every time. It's simple, it's effective, it's fit for purpose, brilliant. And I think that's where we're getting to with the technology as well at the moment. Is you now have the ability to build software so quickly that's fit for purpose for your business that you couldn't have done 5 years ago. The cost of development, you just wouldn't have been able to do it. And now these niche sectors Right, I'm not going to call demolition a niche sector because it's a huge sector globally. Now we're at this time where businesses can really take advantage of this, and I just don't get why demolition isn't at the moment.
Interestingly, as I say, I was with Komatsu yesterday, and one of the things that they revealed while we were talking yesterday was about 10, 12 years ago, they introduced what they refer to as intelligent machine control, so driver aids and that kind of thing. And when they introduced it, and I'll be absolutely honest, hand on heart, I didn't understand a word they were saying because I'd been reporting on heavy iron, and at the time I was thinking, well, this is a bit of a novelty, tech for tech's sake and everything else. Speaking to them yesterday, they are now selling more smart machines than they're selling old, dumb machines. And that's happened in the space of a decade. And it's unstoppable. We've crossed the Rubicon. That's the way we're headed. Yeah.
Just to explain it to me, what would you say is a smart machine, though? Just to explain it to me, what is it? What is
a
smart machine?
I mean, certainly the machine that we're talking about, or we were talking about yesterday, it's called the Komatsu PC220 LCI-12, which I know is a mouthful, but it's basically a 21, 22-ton excavator, but it's got every mod con on it. You can basically pre-program it. So if you're digging a trench, you press a button and the bucket will go back to the middle of that trench, so you're faster. You can pre-program, if you're loading a truck, for example, you can pre-program where you are going to dig and where you're going to deposit that load, and press a button and the machine will take it from the dig point. So you filled the bucket, you've been the efficient operator, but then the machine itself will take over and put that bucket where it needs to be for you to load that truck as quickly and as efficiently as you possibly can. They've got simulators built into it. It really is very, very advanced. I mean, obviously some of this is driven by AI and some form of sort of machine learning and that kind of thing. But that's
the fun out of driving a digger, though, doesn't it?
It might.
I love being in a digger, and I think it's great. But it does take the fun out of it a bit. But I can see. But if you're on a commercial site and you've got that precision and accuracy, and you're doing a fantastic trench, why wouldn't you? And can you leave it unattended? Do you actually have to have a human in the loop or not?
No, you have a human in the loop. I mean, you'd have to think, the capability is probably there for it to be fully automated, but this is like a semi-automation. But one of the things, and I think this does apply to what you're doing, one of the things that really stood out for me, and it was a very, very simple explanation. One of the guys from Komatsu said, when you're operating this machine, to actually go from the point that you're digging to the point that you're dumping that load into the back of a dumper or a dump truck, there's 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 seconds. Because the machine is taking care of that, it's doing it efficiently and accurately and safely, maximum productivity. But it also gives the operator a chance to go, just take a breath, get ready for the next load. And to a large degree, I mean, I use AI, and it's that. I consider myself a writer. I don't write using AI, but to be able to pass my writing through an AI, knowing that when it comes out at the other end, it will still be my words, but there won't be spelling mistakes. There won't be grammatical mistakes. It'll be British spelling rather than American spelling and that kind of thing. That allows me to go, and I think that's where AI, at least for now, kind of belongs. It's a tool to make life easier rather than to replace human beings.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think most of the companies that we work with, they're not shedding staff. Yes, they can reduce operational cost if they want to, but they're looking at how you redeploy staff. So I look in the future, but I say it's the future. There are actually organizations that are doing it already. And that's this blended agentic human workforce. So if you can imagine your organizational model, you're going to have humans doing certain parts of the task, and you're going to have agents doing certain parts of the task, and they will work together seamlessly in the most efficient way for that organizational structure. And then where we're going to in the future, and this one is slightly scary for me as well, the technology is, well, it's actually here already, recursive learning models where the agent can actually define where there are gaps within the workflow and create and develop and launch other agents to take those parts of the workflow. So you're going to have this sort of automated agentic system that will be improving your business performance by itself in the future. And that makes me take a bit of a step back. You've really got to be on the front curve to be doing those things at the moment. But I can really see within the next 2 to 3 years, the organizations that are going to be leading the way in any sector are going to have this hybrid mix of human and agentic workforce.
I've seen the Terminator movies. I know how this works out, and I'm slightly nervous about it. You know, one of the things,
and that's the other part is guardrails. You're right, Mark. Guardrails.
I think one of the things that strikes me about this, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, because I know you're not personally responsible for it. I think one of the challenges that your part of the world has, and maybe it's deliberate, maybe it's just that's just the way it is. I see AI and technology in much the same way as I see the legal profession. It has its own language, which is largely impenetrable to regular folk like me, like agentic, large language models, recursive. Yeah. I'm fascinated by it, but there are bits of it where you think, I'm not clever enough for this. And I do wonder if there's others in the demolition industry that will feel exactly the same.
Once you start understanding the concepts and how the models work, and the terminology, I guess it's like any industry though. Yeah, if you were outside of demolition, would you know what Section 61 was?
Fair comment.
Let's face it. And it's the same for any industry. There's that. Every industry has its own terminology and language that's spoken. It's just that people aren't used to listening, in the demolition sector to the terminologies that are in IT and the things that are happening in IT at the moment. When I first started out, none of this really existed. Okay, there was basic machine learning when I first started out in technology, but technology from when I first started out in building tech platforms has evolved so much that half the language and products that used to exist don't exist anymore. Just not there. It's moved on at such a pace. You just got to, for me, it's constantly learning, constantly moving with the times, constantly being on the front foot to see what that next thing is. And that's the bit that I think with AI or automation, actually, I'm not going to call it just AI, because sometimes you don't need AI and it's not agentic and it's not all of these sexy things you hear out there. It's just a bit of machine learning and a bit of automation to make a process better. Sometimes it's not even that. In all honesty, sometimes it's just helping people get access to the data that they've already got in siloed systems that they've paid a load of money for already and are being charged an extortionate amount of money to keep running, and just giving them a different way of doing it, and giving them access to that data. But you couldn't have done this 4 years ago. We're a new business, and what we're doing, you couldn't have done. 3-4 years ago, just wasn't there, just didn't exist. But I see it from a technology. I've been involved in technology for the last too many years. Actually, I'm not going to say that. And this is actually empowering for people and for organizations, not the other way around. This is actually the opportunity where people can start to own their own data, get real advantage from their own data, not have to go and spend a load of money with a third-party company that hosts that platform somewhere else and gets access to their data or is using their data. This is the bit where the forward-thinking people out there are going, I can actually now start building suitable platform and suitable products that I need internally within my business that's going to make my business more efficient, more competitive, and give me that advantage over everyone else. And this is the bit which is empowering.
Is there a generational element to the obstacles to AI adoption? I mean, given the fact that you've already worked with companies, are you finding a greater uptake with the younger, sexier, dynamic people, or are the older generation equally open to this?
I think the people that it resonates the most with are the people that are trying to run a business. So senior management teams and those in mid-management that are having to fill out spreadsheets, that are having the responsibility for health and safety reviews, that are having the responsibility for delivery, are held accountable, those are the guys that are going, or girls that are going, wow, this could really make a massive impact on how much money our business makes. Yeah, those people that actually have skin in the game of how much money they're going to take home at the end of the year on company performance. It doesn't matter what age you are. Yeah. Yeah, you're going to work to be efficient, to deliver a great service, to make margin. And if you're not looking at this stuff, you go, why not? Yeah, those are the guys that really resonate, the people it really resonates with.
I've got one final question before I let you get back to the day job. And it's the most obvious question of the lot. Should people in construction and demolition fear AI?
Got to think about that. No, I don't think they should fear AI. I think they should fear complacency. I don't know if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I think the fear shouldn't be around, like a robot's coming for my job, or I think it's the complacency of the fact that this is the age that we're in right now. The technology is there. People are going to be, your competitors are going to be adopting it. They are going to be working faster, smarter. They're going to be providing a better, service to their clients. They're going to be more efficient throughout. They're going to have traceability. You imagine turning around to a major contractor as a demolition firm and going, I've heard the term urban mining out there, and recycling, and everyone's got the recycling targets. You imagine you could go in, I'll go back, using something like Coupix again, do this BIM model, you could visualize the whole thing, you could present that to a customer and say, well, look, this is how much of this type of materials in the building, this is how much of this type of materials in the building, these are the elements that are going to be challenging, this is how we're going to take down this 3D model, this is the materials that we can recover, here's the hazardous materials, and this is how we're going to treat it. Then you could tag each one of these elements as it comes off the building, and you can do the waste life cycle, so recycling, so we can do the asset tracking of that waste to a recycling facility and the output of it. All these sorts of things, if you start thinking about how you can transform the demolition industry by gathering this waste data and providing these services to the tier one contractors or the people that you're working with, that's a game changer in terms of competitive advantage. Or even if you're just a small firm and you can estimate quicker, estimate more accurately, not have to spend ages completing Section 61s. You can get an AI agent, a simple specific AI agent to go look through your company history of filling out Section 61s, the similar jobs that you've done beforehand, and then get it to do 90% of the heavy lifting within 20 minutes. And then the human looks over it for an hour and you've got your Section 61 ready to file. I just go, why aren't you doing it?
Comes back to that thing that we see a lot now. You're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to the people that do embrace AI.
Exactly. And that is great statement. That is exactly it. And that's where it comes back to that complacency. If you're not spending time looking into it at the moment, how it can improve your business, and you're complacent, I don't think you're going to be in business for very long.
That's a perfect note to end it on. I will give you. Having said all that, if somebody has sat through the 50+ minutes that we've been talking there, how do people track you down? Where do they find you?
Best way to reach me is just email me, actually. Torquil, TORQUIL at Surtori, SURTORI.com. And
by the magic of AI and technology, I'll make that appear on the screen when that happens.
Yeah.
Possibly.
And the other bit is, as you know, Mark, we haven't done much work with demolition firms, hence why this conversation happened. Most of our work is construction, engineering, architecture. But I just go, why aren't demolition firms doing this? And maybe it'd be great to hear from some demolition firms out there. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there is a reason why demolition firms aren't doing it, but I can't see why. All I